pro player and expert opinion are sometimes at odds with empirical data. So the way I want this video to go is to show you one of these instances, tell you why that perception is probably off, and why it's not as off as it might seem in the first instance, but then also come around and maybe muse a little bit on why that is still valuable feedback for the developer. So let's substantiate some things first. So I sourced I looked through the data space for the entire Overwatch League Stage 1. It's not accurate, yeah, don't bug me about it. But we see Mercy was played in 96.6% of cases. So for the sake of the argument, we can pretty much assume every team had a Mercy at all times. It won't do much for the discussion to have that small inaccuracy here, right? So we already know, yes, Mercy is obviously a very good pick and everything, right? Now, I want to talk specifically about the statement made by pro players and experts who claimed that first picks, or picks in general, in the Mercy meta didn't matter, right? So that was a statement that was often repeated. I've heard it quite a few times. Was, for instance, just recently said on Oversight, right? So a lot of people are of that opinion, and it's definitely formed as a sort of truism now, right? Now, if we look at the actual data, and we can look at this here, again, I source Stage 1 of Overwatch League, and we're looking at the first fight, the first blood win percentage. It is about at 75%, right, for all teams combined. Some teams are obviously better, 82%, and this is basically the percentage of, if you get first blood, how likely are you going to win the fight? Winning the fight being defined by killing more people in a certain time frame, right? So if we then compare that to a regular meta, which is, I now took the first week of Stage 2. Some might say, okay, yes, because this is a pretty small sample size. Why are you using this? Yeah, you're not wrong, but at the same time, I don't expect this to change much. Why do I not expect this to change much? Because we've done this math before. Roy has written an article about it. It's always around 78, 79%, and that was always true for all dive metas way before Mercy was ever even a thing anywhere, right? So 78% seems to be sort of like the golden number. So we are here, it's like 3 point something percentages in difference between how first picks matter. Is that enough to substantiate a statement such as first picks don't matter in the Mercy era? I don't think it does. I think it's pretty much disproven at this point by this evidence. If you want to discuss this, definitely do in the comments, or let me know. I have a curious cat where I discuss these things. So, what does that tell us about pro player perception? Now, I definitely think one aspect one should really take into consideration is the amount of nuisance that a Mercy provides for every player. She's the focal point of the fight. The amount of reses she has is very important, and if your Mercy dies, for instance, as a first blood, it's fairly possible that this almost counts like as a three player kill, right? So obviously it is a huge cognitive strain. You're playing around this Mercy style, and it might be that due to the fact that you're playing around this, it makes it so that the playstyle adapts to Mercy. And this is why this first blood win percentage is still fairly even, because you then learn the intricacies of how to exploit Mercies that try to go for the res of that first target, and you also learn to go for the targets that are most likely not being able to be resed in a dangerous area where you could just punish Mercy, right? Definitely, yes, where she was the double moth where you could instantly res people, that was definitely stupid, right? Still not substantially different in terms of the stats. So the cognitive load is definitely a problem here, right? So pro players have to allocate way more resources to play around Widow than any other character on the field, most likely. And that is also true for other heroes, but now in the Mercy meta, she was the focal point. I've made the comparison on Twitter before. I said she's basically the golden snitch, if you know the game Quidditch. And yeah, the golden snitch is absolutely a lame mini game within the game of Quidditch and should probably have a different scoring system. And that is also true for Mercy because it feels that way, right? It's not really about empirical evidence, and that's the discrepancy we see also between pro players and then what the devs have as data, where they should do balance changes upon, right? So we are telling them stuff, and the devs look at the numbers and go like, you're like 5% correct here. So what can we do about this? Well, one thing one can definitely acknowledge is the feeling, the expression of that, where it comes from which place, right? Because sometimes good game design is actually not going after the numbers. It is to find solutions that even the numbers and even the feelings on these heroes. I would argue that outside the pro player circle, the feeling is much more important. And even inside, because pro player opinion in modern day esports shape public opinion so much, you probably almost want to then sort of go into the pro player opinion and then make your decisions on there, because there's a trickle down effect of opinion of the entire ecosphere where it goes like from pro player to streamer to all the audience below, and the audience then informs their opinion of the others, and suddenly there's this myth born that is really not backed up by empirical data, and you're the dev and saying like, well, I see the numbers, what you're saying is not true, right? Well, it is true in another sense. You're taking way too much focus away from the game, and while that first statement is objectively probably disproven, you're still lacking something in game design here. So I hope I was able to illustrate this problem. If you have any psychological concepts, if you're like a student of psychology, definitely let me know if this has some sort of precedence or if there's some effect here, because I'm always curious about these things. Thanks for watching.